I want you to be prepared. We're going to have some action items for you as we move into our final topic for today, because we're continuing to track the World Health Organization's attempt at a global power grab, and the efforts underway to do this through two different tracks. Now, right now, this week, even as we speak, the 8th meeting of the Working Group on Amendments to the International Health Regulations is taking place in Geneva, Switzerland. This is the final working group meeting before the 77th World Health Assembly next month. Now, with the World Health Assembly rapidly approaching and the Biden administration seemingly full speed ahead, embracing this global treaty, what can we do? What are the concerns? And what can we do? Joining me now to discuss this is Jim Roguski. He is a researcher and author who is now doing everything possible to expose the WHO's hidden agenda. Jim, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
And by the way, happy birthday. I understand today is your birthday.
It is. I'm 64 today, so thanks for having me.
All right. Well, I hope when you blow out those candles, your wish is that WHO will go away.
Well, those are my wishes and my prayers. And, you know, the good news is that they are having a difficult time. And in many ways, that's very simple and obvious. They missed their deadline, January 27th, which was required under Article 55 of the regulations to propose a final package of targeted amendments in alignment with that, which said they had to do so 4 months before the meeting, which begins on May 27th. Well, you know, they don't seem to think that rules apply to them. Back in 2022, they pretended to adopt amendments to 5 articles, but they never bothered to vote. And those articles, according to their latest documents, are supposedly entering into force on May 31st, 2024. It's astonishing to me that the world is just ignoring that, because that really should be a scandal that would bring down Tedros and shine, you know, a light of shame on the WHO. They literally claimed to adopt amendments without ever having conducted a vote.
So let's, I want to get to the substance, but I want to continue this focus because this could be the undoing. How do we make that happen?
Well, step number one is awareness. And, you know, the age of deception that's been prophesized, if we're not in it now, I couldn't imagine it being, you know, people being more confused at this point. So what has happened over the last couple of weeks and months is I've come across documents that were leaked and have presented information about, you know, what is going on with these negotiations. But in the last week, the official versions for the amendments and the official version for the quote unquote treaty have actually been published by the WHO. And so people are now, you know, finally starting to pay attention to information that, quite frankly, is old news. And it's distracting people away from what is in the documents. Now, let me explain, because that might sound confusing. There were a lot of egregiously ridiculous things that go back a year and a half that the nations had proposed. And I will add to, you know, mis, dis, and malinformation. One of the dangers we face is old information. So now that we have new information, what is in these documents for the amendments is not the things that people thought were in them a year and a half ago. Those have been gone for quite some time.
So just so our listeners and viewers understand, this has been a moving target. They've been changing this thing and amending it. I mean, it seems like they meet all the time. So this thing has been, I mean, every time you think you're catching on to something, they kind of change it to shift it up. I think the process itself is designed to deceive.
And what is currently in the amendments that I feel is very concerning centers around the existing Article 31, which is about international travel. Now, that's what the IHR has really always been about. A lot of people have misrepresented what's going on. The local issues that you might be concerned about, the mask mandates, the vaccine mandates, employers requiring things, all these various things, those are local issues that people have to deal with locally. the amendments want to strengthen the ability of nations to, in their words, compel international travelers when you're traveling legitimately, not crossing a border when you're not supposed to. But if you want to seek to travel and go to another country, the agreement amongst all of the nations enables them to compel international travelers who are outside their country to go through mandated medical exams, prophylaxis or prevention, and vaccines, in addition to isolation and quarantine. And the language that they want to add is that the isolation and quarantine can be as appropriate. Well, this really begs the question, Tony. This is the core question of all of this. Who has the authority, under what set of criteria, to determine that a person is a harm, potential harm to other people when the tests are inaccurate and the jabs don't work? The concept behind these negotiations is that, pandemics would be prevented if every nation could have enough investment capital to build laboratories and manufacturing plants to make more drugs and jabs and tests. And that core fundamental flaw in their thinking is not based on health. It's based on a transfer of wealth so that they can scaremonger more people and force the people in relatively poor nations that didn't get as many jabs the first time around to manufacture their own so that they can profit from this by scaring people and jabbing the people that they missed the first time around.
Well,
so,
and Jim, we know that those don't work. As you said, it's a flawed theory, and it was flawed in practice. But there's an underlying issue here as well for those who would say, well, you know what, I don't travel internationally, so it's not going to bother me. I'm going to stay right here. This, at its heart, is torpedoing national sovereignty, is it not?
Well, the national sovereignty has been a red herring for quite some time. The confusion between the expression of national sovereignty in the fact that nations claim that the pathogens that they identify belong to their nation, and they want to be paid when they hand over the genetic sequence. It's a battle between small oligarchs in poor nations who are trying to extract a pound of flesh from the pharmaceutical companies who made billions of dollars out of that national sovereign resource. That what we're dealing with here is countries like the United States, the European Union, standing in defense of the profits made by big pharma through, defending their right to, not be forthcoming and transparent, not suffer any liability for the harms that their products cause, battling not good versus evil, but evil versus evil, where the up-and-coming young oligarchs in smaller nations, they want a piece of that pie. No one is standing up for the people, saying, wait a minute, you're trying to get wealthy nations to put a lot of money into building out the pharmaceutical hospital emergency industrial complex in poor nations, not to give that money or support to poor people in poor nations, but to give it to wealthy people in poor nations so that they can jab them the next time around.
So in many ways, this is a big scam.
Oh, and the PSYOP that's happening right now is twofold. I'll try to rattle them off very quickly. I know time is limited. With the treaty, which is essentially a business deal, they have so many problems in disagreement amongst the nations because they're all fighting over a multi-billion-dollar pie. They pretty much have failed to reach an agreement. Now, even worse than Nancy Pelosi, who said, oh, well, just vote for it and you can read it later, they're going one better. They're saying, look, we haven't finished the document. Vote for it anyways on May 28th. That's when it's on their schedule. And they're opening it up for signatures for nations to become a party to it And if you don't sign on to the unfinished agreement, then you won't get to participate in the ongoing negotiations, because what they've said for a number of the segments is, well, we're shooting for May 31st, 2026. They want nations to sign on to an unfinished document and then continue to move along with negotiations. If you don't sign on, you're out of the deal and you don't get to have a piece of the pie. And so it's like any other sales technique, on Black Friday. The sale ends on May 28th. You better sign up now.
Sounds like a timeshare. But
Exactly.
when you end up having what it's going to cost you is it's going to cost you a lot. So how do we stop this? It's, as you said, it's not completed. They're pushing it. They want to get it done. They want to lock the nations into this. The Biden administration appears to be fully on board. How can this, at this point, do you see a way that it could be derailed?
Well, I have every faith that it will be. And, prayer is certainly a piece of that puzzle. By all means, pray for the outcome that you desire, which is for these negotiations to fall apart and for a vote never to even happen. Now, the U.S. government, the Department of Health and Human Services, has a listening session scheduled for Thursday, May 2nd. Any of your listeners can go to my website. The latest article on Roguski.substack.com is you can sign up, you can send an RSVP email, and the information is all on that article, to get a speaking slot next Tuesday, or you can send in a written comment to the Office of Global Affairs. Now, the way the WHO and, quite frankly, the world operates is your silence is viewed as consent. So this listening session, we had one back on April 11th, and you can view what people had to say. And I would encourage everyone to watch the last speaker on that video. He did a fantastic job of bringing in, the spiritual nature of this war that we are in. But everyone has the opportunity to speak your mind. It's like a wedding when they say, anyone who objects to this matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace. We're being deceived by a little bit of good news, and that good news is legitimate, even if it's old news that people are just now awakening to. But don't let that get you to where you're complacent. Now is the moment to work even harder. You're in the battle, of your life, to crush this attempt to change how the world views what we're supposed to honor, which is our sacred right to be in control of our own body, make our own health decisions. And, just because someone has a test or they want paperwork that says you've been injected with some substance, and if you don't meet those requirements, you are suddenly, dangerous to your fellow man or woman. What they are failing to do, and this is the question of, our time, who in the world has the authority to tell any other man or woman that they are a danger, and it's appropriate for some authority to lock them up or force them to do something to their body? That is the question
who
behind
wants
all
that
of
authority?
Exactly. And, it's not a question, that's a statement, exactly.
Right.
Yes.
Jim Roguski, I want to thank you for joining us and continuing to keep us informed on this. Obviously, we're going to be focusing on this a lot in the next 30 days. So thanks so much for being with us. And again, happy birthday.
Thank you so much.
And folks, you can reply, as Jim was talking about. I've got a link for you if you want to text WHO to 67742. That's WHO, who, to 67742. It'll take you a link where you can provide a written comment to the Department of Health and Human Services. And so we do need to respond to this. We need to pray. Obviously, we need to, in this case, we can't vote, but we need to vote for men and women who will preserve our God-given rights. Now, I don't have time to go into it today, but I do believe this is a precursor to what we're going to see with these efforts for global governance. And this is the way they do it. As Jim was talking about, scaring people to give up their freedoms and to bring about this global governance to somehow keep you safe and healthy. I can tell you the latter will not happen, but they will exercise power over you. Again, text WHO to 67742.